the NASA Office of Inspector General recognizes and supports International Fraud Awareness Week. Today, we will hear from leaders in the Inspectors General community as they answer important questions facing fraud in government programs. I am your host, Jamise Todd, Special Agent with the NASA Office of Inspector General. Let's get started by introducing our panel. We'll start with you, Kim.
Hi, Jamise, and thanks for the great introduction. My name is Kim Benoit, and I'm the Assistant Inspector General for Audits at the NASA Office of Inspector General.
Thank you, Kim, and welcome. Rob, over to you.
Thanks, Jamise. My name is Rob Mancuso, and I'm the Assistant Inspector General for Information Technology, Audits, and Computer Crime Investigations at the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Inspector General.
Thank you, Rob. Pleasure to have you as well. Jason?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Yovich with the Postal Service, OIG, and I'm the Deputy Assistant IG for Supply Management and Human Resources Audits.
Welcome, Jason. And Bob?
Hi, I'm Bob Steinau. I am the Assistant Inspector General for Investigations at the NASA OIG. And Jamise, thanks for moderating the panel. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for those warm introductions. So let's get started. In May of 2021, the Government Office of Accountability issued its report to the Congress on fraud in government programs. The GAO concluded that agency inspectors general and the Department of Justice are making progress in the fight against fraud, but more needs to be done. That brings us to our first questions. What challenges do we face in controlling fraud in government programs, and what does the future look like? Rob, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Jamise, and great question. I think the biggest challenge that we face for the oversight community really is understanding how the programs that we provide oversight over, whether it's auditing or investigating, has changed over time. A lot of these programs that were traditionally paper-based are now electronic-based, which leads me to, I think, one of the biggest challenge is really getting access to the data, understanding who has the data, what is the format of the data, and what is the context of the data. And so when you understand those things, I think it better helps us in terms of ferreting out or identifying or even proactively identifying fraud, waste, and abuse. And in terms of the future, I really think the future looks more collaborative. I think removing the stovepipes even between auditing and investigations and IT and analytics, I think in order to be more successful, we need to be more collaborative. Each of the different disciplines within the Inspector General's community can rely upon each other. Auditors bring a unique perspective that investigators don't have. Investigators bring a unique perspective and understanding and embracing kind of the diversity within the skill sets.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for bringing collaboration to the table. Jason?
I think connecting the dots with our agency's systems is very critical. Creating those or identifying those common identifiers to link data and really understand what our agency's processes are is critical. And there's a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of technical analysis that gets done, but being able to communicate that analysis to non-technical people using a lot of the software that we have available to us. Our agency is very heavy in using Power BI. So really leveraging pictures to communicate a lot of technical information to identify those fraud indicators, see anomalies, et cetera. That's very critical in using those types of communication to communicate with leadership. And data analytics as a whole can be complicated. So trying to simplify it with an analogy of using Legos, having Legos of a bunch of different colors, shapes, sizes, etc. When they're all mixed together, it can be very, very confusing. And having those people on the back end that know the data and know all those disparate pieces to be able to do things with those, sort them, arrange them, present them visually, then us as auditors and investigators can really tell the rest of the story by leveraging that data. So when we perform our audits, perform our investigations, leveraging that data as a foundation, and then telling the rest of the story about what controls are weak, what needs to be resolved, what individual circumvented controls, etc. Leveraging that data is critical.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for speaking on leveraging the data. when it comes to controlling fraud in government programs. Kim, over to you.
Another element of fraud prevention is a strong organizational culture. And so in the wake of COVID, the way that our government agencies have operated and their cultures has changed and is continuing to evolve. And so in the wake of that, in the oversight profession, we also need to evolve. And to Rob's point, it's important that all groups within an Office of Inspector General are orchestrated to identify the red flags. We're not having sidebar conversations with auditees. We're not having the meeting after the meeting. Our witness or subject interviews may not be in person anymore, which makes it harder to read people. We're not facing the traditional fraud indicators that walk right up to you and explain that they're a fraud indicator. So we need to pivot to look at the data. We need to implement continuous monitoring and become smarter in data analytics, because the traditional ways that we've used to detect fraud are becoming obsolete given the virtual nature of agency operations.
Thank you, Kim, for bringing the idea of the culture change as far as how we control fraud in government. Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Jamise. I think, one of the biggest challenges we face right now at this moment is, the pandemic. And, we're coming, out of it, we're still in a telework, maybe limited office time phase. And that's really changed the way we work and the way we look at things. Now, it's a challenge, but I think it's really an opportunity for all of us, because over the last 18 months, we have really learned to embrace technology. Yeah, we've had technology around and we've been using it, but we were forced to use it in ways that we have never used it before. And not only has that made us a little bit sharper when it comes to our IT skill sets, but it's given us more data to rely on. And moving forward, like the other folks on the panel have said, we have to look at the data. We're always going to have our traditional leads and our traditional hotline complaints, but we're really going to need to dive into this data and get smart on it and embrace it in almost everything we do, because it's not going away. It's not a fad. It's going to be part of everything we do on a daily basis. And getting that data pushed out and like Jason was saying, into a format that people can utilize and look at and really understand in a simple manner is going to be key to what we do every day.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for speaking on the advancement of technology and how it plays a role in controlling fraud. That's a great segue into our last question. How has the demand changed for advanced skill sets in analytics, technology, and cyber in the pursuit of fraud prevention for the current and prospective workforce? Rob, we'll start with you.
Great. Another great question. I think the demand has changed because there has been an understanding across the community how important understanding and having the advanced skills in analytics and technology and cyber has been to all of our work. So the demand has changed because the expectations have changed, and the expectations have also changed on our employees, whether new or current. Our employees really need to embrace new technologies. So from an investigative perspective, if we used to serve a search warrant for or a subpoena on bank records, traditionally we used to get those in paper form. Well, we're not getting them in paper form anymore. We're getting them electronically. So the expectations of understanding how to transform a spreadsheet into a pivot table, or how to do searches in thousands of pages of PDF documents, those expectations have really changed. And I think the one thing that hasn't changed, though, is really the demand for individuals who are passionate about the field and about their job. A lot of the people that I know of who are successful are people who are passionate about learning more, about working again across the organization with different disciplines, and really advancing within not only their field, but learning additional fields.
Great, Rob. Thank you for just speaking on the role that passion plays in the demand for change skill sets. Jason, over to you.
So if we look at this from a past, present, and future perspective, all of our professions have evolved over the past several decades. I can remember as a junior auditor printing out reports and indexing and cross-referencing them with a red pencil and a ruler and using my 3-ring binders. Now that seems completely obsolete and very inefficient, but at the time that was how we did it. Now we do those same tasks using Teammate, eCase, whatever management system we have at our respective agencies. So our professions have evolved and they will continue to evolve. So that's where we're at with the past and the present, really taking a pulse check about where we're at with our data literacy. We talk about culture as far as how literate are we with data in our organizations. So performing some type of data literacy assessment to see what the skill set is, where there are any gaps, where our strengths are, I think is critical. And moving forward, what do those folks look like? Some of those folks may still be in grade school who are going to be the ones who are going to take this to the next level. So what do those people look like? Are they current auditors and investigators who are whiz bang at data analytics? Or do they know how to fix our computer? Do they know, what skill sets do they have? Should they be data scientists background and then come in and learn the OIG and understand the business? Or should they actually come from the agency and understand what the business processes are, also know the data, and then understand the oversight role? And my answer is yes to all of those, is that I think we need to have this diversity in the skill sets for the future, because it's not one size fits all. There's not a cookie cutter type data analytic person that's going to take us in the future. But all of those different backgrounds, I believe, is very critical to taking us to the next level.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for speaking on data literacy and for forecasting when it comes to different skill sets that we desire. Kim, over to you.
I'll echo Jason in that diversity is increasingly important as we move into the future. Additionally, as Rob said, the advanced skills in analytics, technology, and cybersecurity are no longer specialties. In order to be successful, these are foundational basic skills that every person working in the oversight community should have. And I think we're reaching a point that if those are not skills that you have or are working to develop, you're going to be left behind with your peers. And when you pair up those basic skill sets with a good understanding of fraud and fraud risk indicators, that's a recipe for success. I'm really happy that at the NASA OIG, we've recently had a push and we have several more certified fraud examiners on staff. And these individuals have taken it upon themselves to learn about fraud and some of the fraud risk indicators to help further our agency and its mission.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for bringing the topic of diversity when it comes to skill sets and the effectiveness of those skills. Bob?
Thanks, Jamise. Listening to the panel, Jason, Rob, and Kim had some really great points, and I couldn't agree more with them. I like to distill it down for me just to a really basic, kind of what we need and what we're looking at. When I look at, the needs we're faced with now, I need problem solvers. I mean, I need folks that can come in, look at a data set and look at, a problem and figure out how to fix it, right? How do we get to that fraud, waste, and abuse at the end? Is it an IT, skill set we're looking for? Is it, creating Power BI visualizations that we're looking for? Is it, reviewing contracts and what's the most efficient way to do that? Is it, looking at paper? Probably not. I mean, like Rob alluded to earlier, we're no longer, physically looking at paper. We're now looking at, data sets that may be, gigabytes and terabytes, worth of data that we have to try to figure out what's the most efficient way of going through that data. And then what's the most efficient way of actually, kind of visualizing that data so people can understand it. So we are looking for these advanced skill sets. Investigators are always going to, kind of, look for those leads and what the next step is, but how we get there and how we look at the data is going to be different than it was, 10, 15 years ago.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for speaking on problem solving and the need to convert data to information. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We know that everyone has a role to play in fraud prevention. Thank you to our panel. Thank you for joining us today. Contact your Office of Inspector General for more information on reporting fraud.